Thank you all for being here and joining us on Facebook Live. I know there's a lot of things going on the screen. Hopefully it is clear on your end. Today we have a really special guest. Jarad Davis with HISD Wraparound is here to speak with us regarding current COVID-19 situations and what is being done for students across Houston. So quickly, we're going to go through a little bit of that. My name is Manoj Koshik, and I teach 1st through 8th grade. And I'm a former HISD science teacher. The time that we're in right now is unprecedented, and our students are facing serious threats to their education, health, and safety. Acting with equity in mind has never been more important than it is today. We have the power to get ahead of some of these issues, but only if we work together. I believe that these conversations are part of that change. I'd like to begin this evening by recognizing that we're still in the middle of a global pandemic, and every day, more people are having to face the dangerous realities of COVID-19. As of yesterday, over 1.2 million Americans have contracted the coronavirus, and over 70,000 people died. I'd like to start this evening by taking a moment of silence and reflection for those who have lost their lives and have been impacted in every way during this crisis. Thank you. This is affecting us all. As a teacher, I know firsthand how it is impacting my students, their siblings, and the schools that we teach in. That's why it's so important that as a community, we understand how decisions are being made and how they're being implemented at the local level.
Good evening to all our guests tonight on Facebook Live. My name is Catherine Etienne, and I teach 4th grade in Spring Branch. I joined One Houston because I believe a lot more can be done to ensure that all our students get the quality education they deserve. And I'm super excited to be working with a group that works in stride with the community in order to accomplish that. We're coming to you live tonight because we're trying to help the community better understand how decisions that impact kids, schools, and families in Houston are being made during the COVID-19 crisis.
One Houston is for everyone. We exist so that all Houston students experience equitable educational opportunities by advocating for the evolving needs of children. During the COVID-19 pandemic, our team has identified multiple issue areas that have unveiled even wider gaps in equity among students and families in the Houston area. Some of the most widely felt problems were food access, technology access, and trauma resources for students and family members. We hope that we will be shedding some light on that tonight with Jarad's help.
Hey everyone, my name is Destiny Chantel Woodbury, and I am the founder and CEO of the Anchor School. I am also a former HISD middle school science teacher. I joined One Houston because in order for change to truly happen, we as a Houston community must have clarity and alignment on what equity means for our city so we can then hold each other accountable. We must reject the one-size-fits-all solution because it benefits adults, not our kids. One Houston gathered a few weeks ago to start learning about a community organizing skill called power mapping, where you begin to identify the problems that are most felt by a community, the people who can make and influence decisions about the problem, and equity-focused policies that can be utilized. We then spoke with school board trustees, Holly Valaseca and Danny Hernandez from HISD, as well as A-Leaf ISD trustee, Natasha Butler. Our discussion with them led us to you. We think HISD wraparound services will be an important part of the decision that will be made. And we are grateful that you have taken the time to be with us this evening. So welcome, HISD Wraparound Service Director, Jarad Davis. Let's get started.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here and look forward to our conversation tonight.
Awesome, we're super excited to have you. So, to start, can you explain what wraparound services are and how they operate in HISD?
Sure. So wraparound services, in a nutshell, what our primary responsibility is to provide and connect students to non-academic supports, resources, service providers. Um, so that includes things such as mental health, physical health. We support students who are dealing with food insecurity, students and families who are dealing with housing insecurity, students that have parents that are incarcerated, and so many other non-academic issues that tend to impede the academic progress of our students. So currently we have 145 outstanding wraparound specialists that support 140 of our wraparound campuses in the Houston Independent School District.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much for, leading this effort. That's truly incredible. So during COVID-19, what are some of the, well, you talked about that, but like, so what has worked well so far during COVID-19 with everything you provide?
Yeah, so what has worked well, of course, I think it would be an understatement to say that this kind of threw us all into a whirlwind. I don't know how many people were actually prepared for something like this. So it was a new challenge for everybody. Now, first of all, I want to applaud all of our district superintendents across the city who have done an outstanding job just leading efforts to ensure students and families have what they need. So as soon as we heard that schools would be closed, we immediately started strategizing around what remote wraparound work would look like. So the things that have been working well thus far are, again, our wraparound specialists are doing an amazing job of connecting with students on a daily basis. They're doing check-ins regularly with students and families. They're ensuring that they have their needs met. While we're doing that, we were also, prior to the closings, in the process of helping Houston in Action advocate for the census. And of course, we understand that when this happened, the census was not necessarily on the top of everybody's mind. So while they have been encouraging families, checking in on them, ensuring that they have their needs met, they're also encouraging them to take the census because we realize that's going to be hugely critical when and if something like this ever occurs again. Another thing that they have been doing well is just advocating for their students, advocating for the families that they support at their campuses and in their communities. They do a wonderful job of letting myself know, letting their managers know just what the needs are and trying to figure out ways to meet those needs. I'm constantly astounded by how they are able to find ways to meet the critical needs when it seems like there's no clear solution available. And then we've also been able to connect with some generous partners who have helped donate resources and or money to ensure that we're able to provide some needed support for our students and their families.
That's great. Like, who are some of those partners?
Sure. So, of course, again, as many of you all know, CompuDot partner with the whole district to ensure that laptops and hotspots and other technological resources were available. But one of our great partners is ProUnitas. ProUnitas is an organization that we work with, and they actually provide and develop the platform that our wraparound specialists use to ensure that interventions are being documented properly. So them, along with another partner of theirs, made a significant contribution to ensure that we would be able to help some of our families financially. They made a large financial contribution to wraparound services that was a huge aid in ensuring that our families had some of their needs met during this time.
Wow, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So I mean, I imagine like there's plenty, like as we're all struggling, like what do you see as like the most critical challenges for wraparound services during COVID-19?
Wow. the most critical challenges for wraparound services during COVID-19 are really the same ones that we were already dealing with. They've just been highlighted and exacerbated as a result of COVID-19, but we're still seeing families who are dealing with food insecurity. Again, it's not any surprise to anybody on this chat, but for a lot of our students, they were dependent on the breakfast and the lunch that they received at school every day. So with us not being on a physical campus, how do we meet those needs when it comes to food? So of course, that's been a challenge that has just happened across the city. Technology has also been a challenge. Access to Wi-Fi, access to laptops, ensuring that everybody had all that they need to be able to engage in online learning. And then of course, mental health. During a time like this, we have seen just mental health needs and supports needed for that skyrocket. People dealing with anxiety during this time, people dealing with depression at an even heightened level at this time. So those are just three of the challenges that we have seen. And then trying to ensure that all of our students are safe. We have a significant number of students who are considered homeless, so trying to reach them has been a critical challenge as well. So we're glad that we've been able to reach a good number, but there are still several that we are trying to reach to ensure that they're okay.
So, what do you see as like the gaps between what those critical issues are and like the services you're able to provide? Like, how could you, like in an ideal world, like how would those gaps be bridged? Like, what is needed there?
In an ideal world, how would those gaps be bridged? That is a wonderful question that elicits so many thoughts. I think one of the gaps is obviously the need that we have in the district, the need that we have in the city, the need that we have in the country far outweighs the capacity and supply that an entity even as large as HISD can possibly supply. So I think those gaps are just in how we ensure that our students, their families, don't have this type of issue in their laps in the first place. Again, many of us knew some of the issues that were going on prior to COVID-19. We knew several of our students, several of our families were dealing with homelessness. We knew they were dealing with food insecurity. We knew they were dealing with housing insecurity. We knew they were dealing with incarceration and all these other issues. But I think it's been a surprise for many others how much of a gap there really was economically, how much of a gap there's been with technology access, how much of a gap there's been in the haves and have-nots. So I think that gap is one that wraparound services solely can't fill, one that HISD solely can't fill. I heard somebody say, they put it in a very eloquent way as it deals with COVID-19. All of us are in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. We have a lot of our students, a lot of our families who were already struggling before, and this pandemic just exacerbated the struggles that much more.
Wow. Yeah, thanks for that response. What I hear you saying is like one thing I noticed is that like there are some people who notice these things, but like not everyone was fully aware of like the severity of these things. And I think that's really interesting. Like before we move on to the next section, like were there any like key people in the district who you found that you realized just weren't aware, and like do you feel like that exacerbated the issues because they weren't aware?
I don't know if there are people in the district that didn't know, because again, in education, my hope is that we kind of have some awareness of these issues of inequity that are already very present. I just think society at large a lot of people started to see, oh, Black and brown communities don't have as much access to healthcare as other communities. They don't have as much wealth as other communities. So just seeing this pandemic bring all of those issues to light for the nation has been interesting because I'm with you. I would think that many people would be aware. It's ever present in front of our eyes on a daily basis, but that did not seem to be the case. But as far as a district, I think those issues people already were aware of for the most part.
Thank you for that. So we're going to move on to our next set of questions. So like we mentioned earlier, some of the most widely felt issues were around food access, technology access, and trauma resources. Manoj, you want to take it from here?
Sure. And thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Jared, for answering those. Those few weeks ago, we identified this issue. So, and I'm also curious to hear that you added homelessness to that. And I'm feeling for those students who are affected by that and how we can assist in that. But we have some specific questions around food, technology, and trauma resources. I'm curious with food. A few weeks ago, HISD partnered with the food bank and gave about 90,000 pounds of food to 3,000 families. There were so many families still in line who were unable to receive support. It's amazing because both in the need for the need for food in our community and the system that was set up by the district, other districts across Houston are doing similar things. When you think about this process and structure, what does it mean for Houston families, and what are the next steps there?
Yeah, again, I think what it means for Houston families is, number one, I think we want our families in the city to be confident that your school districts, the people that lead our school districts, really do care about you, really do have compassion and want to see the best for everybody. And I think the actions taken by HISD, in particular by Dr. Lathan, were, again, outstanding. As the largest district in the state, many times the eyes are upon HISD and people want to see what they're doing. So I think her actions in ensuring that food was available were awesome. But of course, I also see that, again, as I mentioned earlier, the need far outweighs the actual supply and capacity. So of course, we're always just seeking out ways that we can continue to partner with philanthropists, with organizations that can assist us in meeting these needs. I think we saw today that the Kinder Foundation donated $1 million to the Houston Food Bank so that we might be able to continue some of these services to support those families that are still dealing with food insecurity. So again, it's just always the fact that we have a lot more need than we're possibly able to supply at times. And another thing, of course, that we have to think about when it comes to the food sites, food distribution sites, is wanting to keep our own staff safe. We're wanting to ensure that they don't endanger themselves, that they don't endanger their families when they go home. So how do we take all the necessary precautions to ensure that everybody is safe and that everybody can get what they need to survive, to make it?
Thank you. How is Wraparound directly involved with food distribution? Are you gathering data on families and passing that? How does that work?
Initially, we were more directly involved. We had wraparound specialists that were going to food distribution sites, volunteering. I myself went out there along with some of our managers from wraparound services. But again, as we kind of the district readjusted the strategy around that, we took more of a backseat as far as direct site support, but we are still monitoring and ensuring that the data is collected and that the needs of the families are being met. And then, of course, our wraparound specialists are making contacts with those sites, ensuring that the families that they directly support are getting those resources as well.
Gotcha. And I guess in terms of making contact with families, I know as a teacher, it was hard sometimes to reach all my students.
Absolutely.
Just challenge, right? Like either phone numbers are no longer being used, and it was a struggle. How is wraparound dealing with those problems, especially now with so much technology divide? How is that?
Absolutely. That's a struggle for so many across the nation. I've just been reading articles that this is an issue that we're seeing in so many cities and so many states. So one thing that we are doing is, again, they have a list that they can access where they can reach out to students, reach out to families on a regular basis. So they've been doing that. Another thing that we utilize is what we call our student assistance forms, or SAFs. And SAFs are submitted by campus stakeholders, whether they be staff, whether they be parents, whether they be community members, or even the students themselves. They can submit SAFs, which is online and can be accessed by anybody. So we have people who are submitting SAFs, letting us know what the need is, and the SAF goes directly to the wraparound resource specialist of the campus in which that student is. And that specialist is then able to take the necessary steps to reach out to the student or the family and to attempt to meet the needs of that family.
Gotcha. So that form is that main point of contact. Are you guys getting lots of traction with that form? Do you hope it can be more? Yeah. How's that going?
Yeah, I believe since schools closed down, so we closed, of course, on March 16th, which was the Friday before we were to go on spring break. So since March 20th up until now, I believe we've seen over 10,000 SAFs across different categories. So we've definitely seen an uptick in the amount of SAF forms that we're receiving and the amount of need that we're then responding to.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot of really important data, to help you funnel your resources. That's awesome. I'm curious about the emergency constraints that were passed last week with the school board. The first one was regarding the social emotional needs of students, and specifically that the superintendent would not act without those in mind. And I'm curious how wraparound will be involved in providing support for students in regards to that constraint.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be directly involved with that. Again, wraparound resource specialists will continue to check in with families to provide resources to connect them to different services that are operating. Some of our mental health providers have found ways to operate remotely themselves. So we've still been connecting students to our mental health providers that are operating remotely. They've been meeting with those counselors virtually. And of course, we also have many of our mentorship programs that are still operating remotely, so they can meet with them virtually as well. So parameters have been put in place to ensure the safety of our students. So yeah, we're directly involved with that. We are looking to provide as many interventions as possible weekly up until we can go back to our campuses, go back to our schools. So yes, we are ensuring that all of those needs are met on a daily basis.
Gotcha. I'm also wondering that this whole event is quite stressful and traumatic for a lot of folks. In what ways can we add students to that cohort, right? If they're maybe not receiving counseling beforehand, what if they want it? What if they perhaps needed counseling now or wanted access to a counselor? Can students get access to wraparound services and therapists and counselors during this time?
Yeah, for sure. They can do that. Again, we encourage people to submit the staff if they see that that need is there. And again, our wraparound specialists, they are the connectors. So they have the ability to find the resources or the services that will be able to meet those needs. So again, we encourage people submitting that form, and that can be found online, so that we can definitely meet that need. As I mentioned earlier, we have 145 wraparound specialists currently at 140 campuses. As a result of COVID-19, we've had to now provide wraparound support for all 280 HISD campuses. So that's been another pool, because now we have to figure out a way to meet the other half of our district. So we've been working diligently with our management team. And again, I can't say it enough, our wraparound specialists have been doing a phenomenal job to even support the other half of the campuses that don't yet have a wraparound specialist assigned to them.
Wow. So through COVID, your pool of schools doubled.
Absolutely.
And with the crisis, even there's more. So, wow, that's really impressive. So you guys are working all your schools, because I guess the goal was to roll out into those schools slowly.
Yeah, that was the goal. That's was the plan. But yeah, nature doesn't always care about our plans.
Right. Wow, thank you. My last question is about students in DAEP and how their transition, because right now they're in no campus. When we come back to school in the fall, how will wraparound support those students in that process?
Yeah, I know I saw a piece earlier that stated a few districts were ensuring that this time is going to be used for those students as days toward their DAEP stay. And again, I'm not yet sure where we are as a district in regards to that decision, but we have a wraparound specialist that supports DAEP. One, we have, again, amazing specialist, Will Smith, who is at DAEP supporting those students. So even now, he's continuing to work with them. He's reaching out to them. He's ensuring that they have all that they need. So even when we do go back, he'll be right there waiting. He's, again, a wonderful man, a wonderful specialist, and he really has a heart for students that a lot of other people in reality have kind of thrown to the wayside. He's really done a lot with those students and has connected with them well. So again, he's looking forward to the opportunity to see students and ensure that they have what they need, even when they do go back to their home campuses, because that's also something we want to consider. When they do go back to their home campuses, we want to make sure that they have those supports still in place. So if there is a wraparound specialist at the campus that they're going back to, we want our wraparound specialists at DAEP to connect them to that specialist. If they're going back to a campus that doesn't have a wraparound specialist, we still want Mr. Smith to be in contact with them and to ensure that he's supporting them throughout the process.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll pass it to Destiny for some questions about moving ahead.
Yeah, so we want to shift to talk about what happens next. So the next few questions will be about HISD's wraparound services and how they will go further.
Okay.
So the first question I have for you is, how will wraparound continue to function in the summer?
In the summer, so throughout the summer, we still have our wraparound specialists who are on board for part of the summer. So even in June, they're available to provide support to meet the needs of students, to provide access to resources and services. However, they are off in July, so we honor that time. We want them to get rest. So we have our management team who is going to be strategizing and figuring out ways to support during that month that the wraparound specialists are off we'll miss them sorely because there are so many of them and only a few of us. But we know the need does not stop just because it's July. So
Right.
we're going to find ways to support our students even during that time.
Okay. So there's a possibility of having distant learning next year as well. So what is Wraparound doing to prepare for that?
Yeah, I think what we are doing now is we are starting to talk about 2020, 2021 right now, and what that's going to look like if we go back to campus or go back to our offices, and even if we don't. So what we'll be doing is just kind of expanding our remote work. I think we're going to have to figure out ways that other providers, we're going to have to work with them to ensure that they can figure out remote working strategies if they don't currently have them. We'll be working with many of our other partners, including our own community partnerships within the district, to start talking through ways that we can meet the needs of more families and how we can be more proactive. I think one of the things that I oftentimes think about on my end is just how do we create long-term sustainability with wraparound services and create those partnerships that are not going to be on a temporary basis, but we have a long-standing collaboration. So again, that we are ensuring that all of our students that we're connecting with, that we're interacting with, have what they need to graduate, to go on to their next step in life, and to just be successful overall. So we're starting to think about both plan A and plan B. Plan A, if we do go back to campus. Plan B, if we have to continue to work remotely, it'll just be an expansion of what we've already been doing remotely. I can say one of the pleasant surprises was how quickly we were able to get 2 senior managers, 14 managers, and 145 wraparound specialists on our virtual platform as quickly and seamlessly as we did. So I was personally proud of us being able to do that without too many hiccups. So how do we then expand that work while continuing to meet the need of so many families that are sometimes going through significant challenges?
Right. All right. So Wraparound is relatively a new department in HISD, around 4 years. So looking ahead to 5 years, what are some things you hope to accomplish with Wraparound? Like, I know you've have like on this talk, there's like lots of successes and like obviously like things that you guys are still learning right now. But what are some things that you hope to accomplish with Wraparound moving forward?
One thing we hope to accomplish is we hope to continue to expand, as Minaj kind of alluded to earlier. By 2022, we're hoping to have wraparound support, wraparound services on all 280 HISD campuses. So we're hoping to take that next step, the next phase of expansion into next year. So I think that's just going to be a decision by our board and our superintendent as to how to do that. So that's already what I'm strategizing in my mind. So if we do expand to another set of campuses, we want to make sure that we have the staffing, the resources available to be able to meet those needs and to meet the expectations that the board will have of us. So that is something that I'm considering, in just thinking about how far we have come in these 4 years. It's been a whirlwind, but it's constantly how do we continue to meet the needs of students. The wraparound specialists, they are ensuring that those basic needs are met, those needs that we know can be significant challenges for a lot of people. So how do we support them and advocate for their ability to do their job with fidelity, and also keeping that compassion going. And I think that's really why we are big on collecting the data, so we can really show the district, show the city that this is what the need is. This is what we need allocated for this type of work to continue to go forth. And I'm so thankful for the many advocates that we have in the city who have really been supportive of wraparound services. So many that are connected to One Houston and so many others that see the need for the work, they see how it has already been carried out. And they've told me that they want to see this continue. So I'm just excited to have that community support for the work that we're doing.
Yeah. So how can we support? How can people engage?
That's a great question. Number one, continue to advocate for wraparound services. I think we all know the need is there. Many people are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And of course, in order to reach that highest peak of self-actualization, there are certain basic needs that need to be met. So continue to support us in that effort, advocate for wraparound services. I think another thing is if you are part of organizations or are leading organizations that are interested in partnering with wraparound services in some capacity, please reach out to me. Let me know. We're always looking at ways that we can continue to collaborate with people who want to see the best for our students in the city of Houston. And then if you see a need directly, you are in contact with a student who has a need directly and they go to a school in HISD, fill out that SAP. Let us know so we can attempt to meet that need.
Yeah. I don't know. I personally love like the whole wraparound structure and how you all are is really working with our kiddos who need this support. And I'm happy here that you are working to expand it. I know it's a lot of work to ensure that you are meeting the needs of all kiddos who need the support. So I just want to say kudos to the work that you all are doing at HISD with the wraparound services.
I appreciate it. Again, I think it's people who form organizations like One Houston that really cause this type of department to be in place. You've seen the work that you all have done around discipline efforts. So please, you all continue doing what you're doing, continue to advocate, continue to support, continue to organize, because we need that alliance for sure. So thank you all again for just allowing me this time to come on here and share some of the things that we're doing for the city and for our students and families.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jarad. I have one last, we've asked you tons, we've peppered you with so many questions. Thank you for being so receptive to all of them. It's really insightful and shows what's really important for our students in our city. The last question is, what's the greatest hope that you carry right now?
Wow, that's a great question. The greatest hope that I carry. I think I deal with a lot of cynicism, but I also deal in a lot of hope. And my hope is that for those who weren't already aware of some of the issues that plague our society even prior to this pandemic, that they will start to see the light and that we can all work together to ensure that none of our students and none of our families have to deal with any of these issues in the first place. Again, a pandemic is not easy on anybody, but it is easier to deal with when you have food in your home, when you have a roof over your head, when you have access to good health care, when you have access to functional technology. So even when those people are struggling and they have all of those privileges, imagine what people who didn't have those privileges and that access in the first place are dealing with right now. So my hope is that we will all start to see some of the gaps that we have in our world and how we can fill those gaps by coming together, collaborating together, disagreeing in ways that are still going to be civil, but still using even those disagreements to really build upon the ideas that we're going to need to ensure a functional world that our children right now will one day be adults and we'll be happy to say that the people that came before them actually cared about them. So that's kind of my hope at this moment.
Thank you.
All right. So this has been a really informative evening. We'd like to thank our guest, Jarad Davis, Director of HISD Wraparound Services. We wish you all the best in your service and hope that you continue to stay strong during this really hard time. We need equity-focused leaders like you. And One Houston community is here to help ensure equity stays at the front of the agenda. And thank you also to those who joined on Facebook Live tonight. We're going to continue our power mapping session so that we can better understand the decisions that are being made related to education in Houston during COVID-19. Remember to follow One Houston on Facebook for updates and check out our emails for the next event coming up. We like to close out with a little chant that we do on every single time we have an event. So when everyone come off of mute. And when I say go, we're going to say one city, one power, one Houston. All right? One city, one power, one Houston. Go. One city, one power, one Houston. All right. Thanks, Jarad.
Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.